The chairman's script. As chair of Division 2 of the House Finance Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with House Rule 67 and the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. This public meeting is pertaining to HB2 areas. Please note that there is no physical location for members of the public to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with emergency order, I am confirming that all members of the committee and select legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom electronic meeting platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting by the Zoom platform or by telephone. All necessary access information has been made available in the House calendar and through the electronic calendar on the General Court website. The notice for this meeting complies with House rules and RSA 91A. Anyone who has a problem accessing the meeting should email lba_fiscal@leg.state.nh.us. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. The LBA staff are on the meeting assisting us. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call. Let's start the meeting taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. So Representative Lynn, if you would call the roll.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Porter.
Yes, I'm here in my home in Hillsborough, and my husband is in the house, but not in the room with me.
Thank you. Representative Turcott.
Representative Turcott, I'm in the office of the, I don't know what it's called, in the State House anyway. I'm here by myself.
Thank you. Representative Heath.
Good morning to the Ides of March. I'm Mary Heath, and I'm here in my home in Manchester, and my husband is in the other room.
Thank you. I'm Representative Lynn. I'm present in my home in Wyndham, and my wife is in the house, but not in the room. Representative Murray.
Good morning. Kate Murray's here in Newcastle with my dog. Husband's in the basement.
Thank you. Just give me 1 second. Representative Petrie.
President Petrie is here in Farmington. The dog and the wife is roaming the halls again.
Thank you. And Representative Umberger.
Yes, I'm in my home in Kearsarge. My husband is in the house, but not in the room.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Representative Lynn. I'm welcome to everybody again. Today, we're going to be talking about the government scholarship program. And I am not sure who wants to go first. Is it the treasurer or somebody else?
Hi, Madam Chair. I'm happy to kick things off today if you would like, but I'm also joined, as you can see, by Treasurer Mazzapelli, James Q. Austin, BFA, and I believe Chris Elms from our office is on. I don't know, Nikki, if you would be able to promote him to a panelist, if you see him.
Okay, Matt, that would be great if you'd like to start out.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. It's great to be back in front of all of you again, this time to present the governor's student debt relief plan. This is something, of course, that was it has a lot of history to it, if you will. Something that was proposed during the last budget cycle, and it was then ultimately didn't make it into the final compromise budget, but there was additional action that took place last year, trying to build towards a consensus. And what I would say, and what you see in this proposal here today, really is a continuance of that compromise that was worked on last session. And what we've done essentially is find ways to continue to invest these monies in New Hampshire students and its workforce to make sure that we're driving the best outcomes for our state. You notice here in HB2, and it begins on page 68, for those of you that are following along on the text, essentially as an opportunity to reallocate how these monies are distributed. We've put forward a plan where 20% will continue to go to direct scholarships, the way it currently operates under statute. But then we took a hard look at where the remaining 80% can best be invested. And with that, 20% would continue to go to the unique endowment program, and the balance, that remaining 60%, as a historic investment in student debt relief and workforce development. We see this as an opportunity to drive students to stay in New Hampshire, to work in New Hampshire, especially in critical fields. You notice things that are called out specifically, nurses at state facilities or any licensed medical professional, in addition to transformative things like biotechnology and opportunities to continue to grow our state and make sure that we have the workforce to really drive forward those key initiatives that New Hampshire is continuing to be a leader in nationwide. Again, we see this as an opportunity where our workforce, especially what we've seen with COVID-19 and the challenges of the pandemic, we wanted to identify some of these key fields and use this as a program for good, right? To make sure that we are able to be nimble and respond to some of those challenges as they arise. And as people, are coming out of the pandemic and looking at where they may want to live, we know that New Hampshire has seen a hot real estate market, and especially people that might want to find themselves in a more rural environment, give this extra incentive for recent graduates to come live and work in New Hampshire. And that's the high level overview, if you will. Again, seeing this as an opportunity to build on that success. And I'm happy to take any questions, or, if James or Monica want to, touch on some of those other aspects of why we see this really as a tremendous workforce driver. And again, just celebrating the success of the 529 plans. And the other thing, just to close my section here, is none of this money is taxpayer dollars, right? This all comes from assessment revenue from the 529 plan. So finding a way to do this in a way that doesn't impact the general fund is another key highlight of this real innovation in how we're able to offer this type of assistance to both students and recent graduates.
Chris, did you have something you wanted to add?
Summed it up well for us, but I'd be happy to help answer any of these questions.
Are there any questions from the committee at this point? Representative Heath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a little bit confused about how I'm looking on page 7. As you begin to describe the debt the program, and I just am unclear on really how it's going to work, and when it's up and running, what would it look like?
So, and this might be something where, James, you feel free to chime in, as your agency would be the administrator of these funds. But this program is designed to be nimble and flexible. You'll notice there's language in there that not only delineates some initial key workforce areas to start out, but also invests power with the Commissioner of the Department of Business and Economic Affairs through consulting with the Commission to identify additional high priority fields that we might want to extend these benefits to. But as far as how this would work, the BFA would be tasked with essentially offsetting those loans of students that are eligible for this program. or I'm sorry, recent graduates who are New Hampshire residents that are working in New Hampshire. And again, to provide that existing incentive, a new incentive to that existing workforce, to make sure that the high cost of student debt is not a barrier for them to continue to work in New Hampshire and provide these critical benefits. But James, I'm happy to turn it over to you if there's anything else you'd like to add on that.
Yes, good morning, everybody. For the record, James Q. Wallace, Executive Director from the BFA. I'm sure like the treasurer will always begin with a caveat that we can't take positions for or against the legislation, although of course we certainly acknowledge the impact this would have on our ability to recruit workforce in these key areas. So, I could take the committee through the mechanics of how a student loan forgiveness program is proposed to work. If that's something the committee would like, it would just take a few minutes. Would that be helpful, Representative? So this...
Excuse me. I think that would be helpful to let us all try to understand this.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. So this legislation, it really is a springboard off of what was existing legislation. Some of you may remember from a few years ago, to provide student loan forgiveness as a workforce attraction tool for the regenerative medicine industry. That program was always designed to be scaled up to apply to other industries as needed, and a lot of the same underpinnings, exist here in this bill. So, but to speak to the legislation directly, the legislation authorizes the BFA to design a program that meets certain key standards. It defines what the industries are for eligible participants, while also acknowledging that that should be a living list as needs change throughout the future. It also says basic things like they need to have a degree or certificate of some kind from an accredited institution. And then it says, BFA, please design the program. And before you launch it, the program we designed would have to be brought to the fiscal committee, which is the same way it was done with the regenerative medicine student loan forgiveness program. So that work had been done in prior years. The fiscal committee during the last session was very enthusiastic about the program design. So I would imagine this would work in essentially the same way. And it's as follows. So how it works is for an individual to be eligible, the first thing that has to happen is their employer has to register. So their employer has to be certified by us that they are of the type that's allowed under the legislation, right? Direct care, healthcare providers, employees at the state hospital, there's biotechnology, things like that. So we say, yep, you're a valid employer. Therefore, your employees are now eligible. And the kind of boundaries on the program are that 80% of the money needs to go to folks who got their degree within the last 2 years, right? So we want to attract new workforce into the state, or retain new graduates that are here and we want them to stay. The other piece of the legislation says that we need to, to whatever degree feasible, try and ensure that people from low and moderate income, people who have financial need, are the ones targeted in the program to try and get the money to where it's going to have the most impact. So then after that, if an individual is accepted into the program, they will sign a 5-year commitment. Say, I'm going to stay in New Hampshire for 5 years. They sign up. We work with them. We identify all of their outstanding qualified student loans. Let's say it's $20,000. At the end of the first year, assuming the person has continued to work there, they continue to make their student loan payments to their student loan providers. We say, all right, how much do you owe? You finished your first year, so out of these funds, we will cut a check to pay down a percentage of your current student loans. So it gets knocked down by a chunk. Year 2 goes by, they keep making their student loan payments. At the end of year 2, we do the same thing. Year 3, same thing. So each year, that loan gets knocked down to the point where by year 5, their student loan is now eliminated. It actually, you have a little bit of a hidden benefit in this system because since they're continuing to make their payments, we pay down their principal, their own payments. Now, less of it gets consumed by interest to the student loan companies and it goes more toward principal. So people actually pay off their own loans faster under the system. And those advances that we make are technically loans to that individual at 0%, no payments due, no interest is accruing. It's technically a loan that we are making at the end of each year, that at the end of the 5th year, if they complete the program, that loan is forgiven and they're done. If for some reason somebody moves away and decides, incorrectly that Wyoming's a better place to be, they actually owe that money back to the trust and they have to pay it back on the same terms as whatever they were paying their student loan. That way the person's no worse off. And so that's the job. So we would be in the role of verifying employers, employees, managing what would probably be, several hundred counts per year enrolled into the program, resolving any issues with the customers and trying to help people out.
Thank you. Mary, did that answer your question?
Yes, Madam Chair, if I just could inquire a little bit further to Matt, if possible, please.
Yes, you may.
Matt, I believe we had quite a conversation about this program in the last session, but my big concern is that in the past, millions of dollars have gone, well, number one, we failed to provide any funding for the scholarship, the Running Start program, and just it would really cause a hardship on so many families. But secondly, I think this is a great idea, but what about all the students we have in the state of New Hampshire going to 4-year institutions or 2-year institutions who have depended on the funds that have been in the unique program, and the universities across our state that depend on those funds. Those dollars will not get there. So what does that mean for those institutions, especially at this remarkably difficult period in time for higher ed?
Well, Representative Heath, what I would say to that is ultimately this program continues to make investments in those same endowments, which have done tremendously well over the life of this program, right? We've seen those endowments be built up, continue to grow, and we continue to make investments there. And just looking back to what the compromise legislation was introduced in 2020 that would have allocated, say, $2 million to those endowments, this proposal remains more generous than what was introduced last session, right? So we aren't trying to vilify the endowments by any way, but what we are trying to do is show that we've met a certain threshold where we can continue paying scholarships to students out of those endowments while also address other emergent needs with workforce by providing the student debt relief. So I think that ultimately we've struck the appropriate balance to continue making investments, continue to pay out scholarships from those endowments in addition to the 20% that goes to direct scholarships. So then also give students this glide path that if you stay in New Hampshire for 5 years, and we know that people that decide to live in a location for 5 years, they become a part of that community and they're more likely to stay. And that has benefits to New Hampshire that go far beyond just the student debt relief program. But again, striking that balance, allowing those endowments to continue to grow as a result, and ultimately, again, create that flexibility for the state to use these dollars, which are a testament to the success of 529 plans, and make sure those dollars go to the areas of the greatest need.
Thank you very much. Representative Porter, you had a question?
I do, Madam Chair. Thank you. I actually have 2 questions. And again, these are newbie questions. And I don't know who will answer them. So it sounds to me like money is being taken out of the scholarship program and put into this loan forgiveness program. Am I hearing it wrong? That's my first question. And my second question is there an upper limit for the loans that are forgiven? If a student has $100,000 worth of loans, is $100,000 gone at the end of the 5 years, or is it only maybe $10,000 of their $100,000? Thank you.
Matt, if you would answer that, please.
Yes, thank you, Representative Porter. And I'll kick the second one over to James. But what I would say is that no money is being taken out of direct scholarships. The current provision is 20% of the unique program funds. That remains at 20%. What we're doing is adjusting what percent goes to the university endowments, which do pay a small fraction of that money in scholarships, but also now investing that in student debt relief for individuals that live in New Hampshire and are working in New Hampshire. And James, do you have the specifics offhand? I think this might be something that ultimately is established through rules, but.
Yes, and thank you, Representative Porter. There's no legislative cap because the amount will probably vary by industry. The proposed amount we had put to the fiscal committee in the regenerative medicine iteration of this was $50,000, recognizing that student loan debt is a lot higher than any of us really realize, but also recognizing that you can't have a small number of enrollees eating up too much of the fund. So 100,000 is too much. 50,000 felt like the ceiling. The average will probably be much less than that, considering that this program is equally open to folks with 2-year degrees as it is for 4-year degrees. So that's the cap.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Lynn, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I have a series of questions, one of which Representative Porter, the answer to her question, I think, answered. Although the first question I have is, I'm on the board, the 529 board, and I thought that very recently we had rearranged the allocation between the endowment and the direct scholarships so that it was significantly more went to the direct scholarships and less to the endowment. And so I think that sort of when you said before, Matt, that it was 20% that went to direct scholarships, I thought that we had changed that recently. Ms. Mazzapelli, am I wrong on that?
Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Lynn. I think it was probably a good time to provide a little background. I think before I try to answer that question, I think it sounds like maybe some legislators are not familiar with the actual program. So I think that's how we can provide a little information. There are two types of scholarships. The direct scholarships, what Director Mello is referring to, there's an endowment program. So funding goes to this endowment program. And then in turn, this endowments provide these direct scholarships to New Hampshire students. And that in the rules that stated that is 80% should go to these endowments. And then the rest, which is about 20%, goes to what we call the unique annual allocation program. And those are direct scholarships that go to students. And those are essentially the scholarships that the College Tuition Savings Advisory Commission determines the eligibility criteria for that. So to answer your question, Representative Lynn, last year in 2020, the commission voted to change the allocation or the percentage that goes to the endowments versus the direct scholarships. And through that request or through that decision that the commission made, we spoke to the governor's office, and the governor issued an executive order to change the percentage on a temporary basis. So what that did is he changed the rule for a period of 1 year. So 70% will go to direct scholarships during the current academic year, and the rest to the endowment. So that was a temporary change that allowed to, it did two things. It really expanded the eligibility for students because you raised one of the criteria was to, is the expected family contribution. Before it was 0, so we were able to increase that to 1,000, and also the award amount changed from 800 to 1,000. So with the ability to have more funding in the annual allocation program, we were able to expand the scholarship program and provide more scholarships and more money to students during this difficult time. So you're correct that that change occurred, but it will expire at the end of this fiscal year. And at that point, the rules will go back to how they were. And then 80% will go to the endowments and 20% will be for the direct scholarship program, the annual allocation program.
Right, okay, so, but I guess I guess what I'm saying though is, as compared to the way it is right now, that 70% goes to direct scholarship. It would be from that, am I correct in understanding that it would be from that 70% of money that goes to direct scholarships right now, that a significant portion of that would be reallocated to the debt forgiveness? Am I correct in that?
That is correct.
And so then the next I guess if I may, Madam Chair, I have.
Yeah, excuse me just a moment. Who is currently managing that direct scholarship program?
So the advisory commission oversees this program. The program itself is housed in the Treasury. So Treasury makes all the disbursements, and we disperse all the funds to all of the participating colleges and universities.
So it's the college and universities that are actually running the direct scholarship program. Is that correct?
They are the ones that decide, and through the financial aid packaging, they select all eligible students, and they're the ones that disperse and award the funds, the scholarships. We simply manage, we provide the funding to them, and they report back to us with the number of scholarships that they award every year.
Okay, thank you. Representative Lynn, I'm sorry, continue.
No, that's fine. Thank you. That was an important clarification. I guess the other thing that I want to make sure I'm understanding is, I understand that from what you were saying, Mr. Keywallace, that there's that this would be something that would have to be decided by rules. But it sounds like, if I'm correct, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the potential amount of money that could be forgiven per individual would be substantially higher. I mean, even if, let's say you limit it to $50,000, that would be substantially higher than the maximum amount that students under the current program can get in loans for. I mean, if I understand it correctly, it's $2,000, a $2,000 scholarship for 4 years, so $8,000. And so I guess what I'm concerned about, candidly, is if you compare, let's say, $8,000 under the current program to $50,000 under the loan forgiveness program, that suggests that there will be considerably fewer people that will be able to take advantage of the loan forgiveness program than the scholarship program. And I'm kind of, to be honest, I'm really kind of concerned about why that makes sense.
Thank you, Representative. Just as a quick point of clarification, although I think it may have been slipped the tongue by Budget Director Mayu, so it won't be the rules process, just to be clear, since it'll actually be through a program endorsed by the fiscal committee. It won't be through a jail card process, but the amount, it is certainly subject to the approval by that fiscal committee. If they wanted to lower the ceiling to ensure more people got it, I think they could. However, I think you're right in that, unless they set it at $8,000, which I don't think they will, and couldn't run, I think, an effective recruitment tool at that level. You need a bigger amount. I do think that it will be more concentrated as opposed to spread out. And so the idea is, you know, concentrate those resources in the industries where the workers are most acutely needed, be most effective in getting those folks into the state, as opposed to sort of spreading it out. You know, I mean, I think the real policy, you know, consideration for the legislature here is, do you want to, you know, help make affordability on the front ends by providing small amounts to more people to go to the institution with no guarantee whether or not they'll stay in New Hampshire? Or do you want to put bigger amounts in the hands of still a lot of people, but a fewer number of people with an absolute guarantee that 100% of them will stay, or else they have to give the money back? So I think that's really the policy consideration.
And thank you, James. I think you articulated that perfectly, right? This is a highly targeted program to key industries, right? Where the existing scholarships aren't tied to specific fields in the same way, and also don't come with that guarantee that people that attend a New Hampshire school won't go find a job in Boston, for example, or any other part of the country, because we know we can export graduates. Our challenge has been finding ways to create incentives for them to stay and provide workforce, especially in rural areas of the state. And again, to James' point, how targeted and how large of an incentive is a policy consideration for sure. But we see the merits of this being that workforce driver with guaranteed benefits to stay here within the state.
May I ask just one more question, Representative Umberger?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. And the last question I have is when the under this proposed program, when the loan is forgiven, is that a taxable event, or is there some exception in the IRS code that says, you know, this kind of loan forgiveness is not a taxable event?
So to my understanding, that is a taxable event, the same way that other existing federal programs, whether it be the public service loan forgiveness program or others, this would have similar tax implications to those other existing programs. And just to clarify one thing, this program would be mutually exclusive of those. So a student or a recent graduate couldn't participate in more than one program. So this would just be limited to this single program, but to my knowledge would be taxable at the end. Or actually would be taxable, James, and this might be a question for you, but taxable at the end or when each loan has been issued year to year?
Yes, thank you. And Representative Lynn, it's also my understanding it would be taxable, like many other kind of, you know, programs like that, and it's taxable upon the event of forgiveness, because that's when the participant would need to report that as forgiveness of debt income or debt cancellation income, which would occur conclusion of the 5-year period. So it would be very clear up front, this is what your eventual tax implication would be. You know, we of course coach people along the way to be prepared for that. One caveat I would put on that is, and I don't know this, but I did read that in the stimulus plan that the President just signed, there were some alterations to the taxability of certain student loan forgiveness programs. And I don't know if that's only for federal programs or if it's also for state-run programs, but it's certainly something we're looking into.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Representative Turcotte, I believe you were next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I have a couple quick ones, if you don't mind. The first one is somebody was mentioning the 5-year commitment. Maybe I have an old copy of HB2 or whatever, but the one that I'm reading actually eliminates that 5-year commitment. Somebody speak to that?
Representative Turcotte, which page are you on?
It's page 71, second paragraph. The mention of the 5 years is stricken.
And Matt, I can
So
speak to that too if you want.
Why don't you start, James? But what I would say is we are amending an existing statute that was specifically tailored to regenerative manufacturing. So it might just be a matter of that. But James, if you have it.
I believe that's right, Matt. But you're right, Representative. It is being proposed, I see here, to be struck in the statute. The proposal for how the program will operate for the fiscal committee is going to have a 5-year commitment. If you have less than that, I don't really think you get the bang for your buck for wiping out this debt. If you ask for more than that, I think you have a high likelihood that, you know, it's just too long to kind of seal the deal. But I don't see it in the statute, but it would be fiscal committee's approval.
Can I continue, Madam Chair, with 2 more quick ones?
Absolutely.
Thank you. The second one, it's kind of a theme here. Representative Lynn and I think it was Representative Porter talking about the amount of the student debt. So it's really a couple-part question, I guess, combined into one. But let's say we have 2 students with $50,000 debt each. First question, who's going to decide how much of each of that 50,000 is forgiven? Who's going to be making those decisions?
Matt, we can't hear you. Your lips are moving, but we can't hear you.
Sorry about that, Representative. I was double muted. This would be something that the fiscal committee would ultimately endorse. To the extent that demand for the program outstrips the available funding, there would be a determination made at that point. But again, that's assuming that both individuals, you know, are qualified, they meet all the criteria. And again, that's something that if there's legislative intent to specifically insert a provision of that nature, that's something the legislature could certainly do. But again, it would be on an equal playing field, depending on the availability of the funds.
Go ahead with your follow-up or new question.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I was kind of missing. I don't know if it's on my end that the audio's not working or if everybody's seeing it. It might be the room I'm in, but I missed part of it. But I can go back and look, no problem. The last part is I note that there's a propensity throughout HB2 and a lot of other things that keep mentioning the biotech industry and such. Is there a particular reason why that's happening throughout?
So the existing statute, and this comes from a bill that was passed, I believe, in 2018, that specifically created a program for advanced regenerative manufacturing. These conversations that both started with House Bill 2 years ago and continued in 2020 have sought to broaden that program and leverage these 529 assessments to provide that student debt relief, not only to biotechnology, but also to other key workforce areas, such as nursing or other things that are delineated both in the statute and then the commissioner of BEA could address additional necessary areas for workforce development. So I would just attribute that to an outgrowth of where these conversations started several years ago. And rather than coming at this from a blank slate, again, we're continuing to build on that initial proposal.
Thank you.
Representative Murray, I believe, no, I'm sorry, Representative Porter, I believe you were next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that I've done as part of my legislative duties is to serve on the New Hampshire Commission for Deafness and Hearing Loss. And during that work, I learned that there's a critical shortage of interpreters for the deaf and that they carry quite a debt load. And in the last budget, we put a line into the budget to allow their debt to be part of a debt forgiveness program. I believe that's what the budget did, although no money was allotted. So my question is, who will be determining what industries and programs will be eligible for this kind of loan forgiveness. Is it areas where we have critical shortages like interpreters for the deaf, or is it industries that we want to encourage to grow in the state like biotechnology?
Sorry about that. This bill does delineate specific criteria, including any licensed medical professional, which would be captured in HB2 is introduced. And then again, the authority rests with the Commissioner of the Department of Business and Economic Affairs and this commission to identify other areas down the road that would be good fits for this type of program. And the reason we've granted that authority is for this program to remain nimble, right? Right now, we have a challenge specifically with healthcare workforce. We aren't going to try to predict what the needs of the state might be in 5 or 10 years, but given a program that has the potential to be as successful as this one, this can be a very effective tool to address in real time workforce development concerns that might arise in the future. So we have an initial list. It's a very healthcare focused list, I would say. And then the Commissioner of BEA, with the advice of the commission, could expand that should they see a need to do so.
Representative Heath, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I remember well the industry that this was specifically geared toward. My question is, well, first of all, I just would like to say I'm deeply disturbed by the fact that hundreds of New Hampshire students will not receive any kind of support as they had previously, as well as our universities and colleges will lose a large amount of scholarship money that they have to give up. But my question to you is specific to those businesses that will benefit, and it is an extraordinary benefit. Will they be putting in some funds to match these scholarships, or will this just be a scholarship based on those areas that are decided upon, and there's no contribution on the part of the business? If you could reply, please.
Well, I guess what I would start off is just to address some of your concerns in the first part of that question. There is still money that will go to university endowments, and that money will continue to provide for scholarships to students at New Hampshire institutions. So just because we're reallocating some of the funding doesn't mean that the very well-warranted assistance to current students, that doesn't evaporate overnight, right? We know that this program has continued to build university endowments tremendously over the past 2 decades. And they're now at a spot where they can continue to pay out scholarships, even if we're putting somewhat less proportion of these 529 assessment dollars into those endowments. As for the second part of your question, and I apologize, Representative Heath, what was the second part of that question?
Will the businesses make any contribution to the repayment of the scholarships?
Thank you. And I know when this bill was first passed in 2018, there was some provision for the advanced regenerative manufacturing to put forward some sum of money. I don't know where that stands, and I'm happy to report back to the committee. And I guess, James, if there's anything that you have to add, but Representative Heath, happy to respond to that question once I have a chance to check on that for you.
Yes, Representative Heath, I can add a little bit. There's nothing in the current legislation that requires a business to pay if their workers want to take advantage of the program, right? Because this is really a program to help new workers come to the state. It's really for that individual. There's nothing in the legislation that says we need to get money from a business to let their employees have a benefit. However, in the proposal from the BFA to the Fiscal Committee, we do propose an administrative fee be paid by the business when they first sign up to have their employees all be eligible, this is going to help them recruit workers, right? It's actually going to be a very powerful recruitment tool. And there's some administrative costs that the business should help cover in order to participate. It's not particularly onerous because getting the business verified that they're the right kind is not that difficult, but they at least need to cover the cost. But the real benefits for the employee.
Representative Murray, you have a question?
Yes, I've got two short questions and one that's a little longer. The first one, Representative Heath already addressed, but I just wanted to sort of iterate that this is a benefit to the business, and it seems to me they should have some skin in the game. If it should be to their benefit to keep their employees. So I just wanted to piggyback on Representative Heath. I think that's something that's rather important to consider. The second thing, did I understand correctly that the choices of this would be made by the fiscal committee? When you say fiscal, you're saying fiscal committee?
I am, Representative, thank you. Yes, and I agree, skin in the game is sort of the motto at the BFA, by the way, on your previous point. But so yes, the legislation requires that the debt forgiveness workforce improvement plan, before any action can be taken, the legislation requires that the plan, which will include a lot of the details we're talking about here today, the limit on the amount, the employer contribution, all of that needs to be approved by the fiscal committee before operation. Furthermore, the program is subject to oversight by a cross-section of legislative and other, a commission that provides oversight to the program, representatives from the House and the Senate, Labor, others, and then is tasked with making annual adjustments to the program if necessary, to make sure that it's performing it.
With respect to a fiscal committee, you know, and all the hard work they do, my first inclination is that I'm not sure that's the best group to make these kinds of decisions. And I shall have to think long and hard about that. But that to me raises concerns about how they're going to make their decisions. The third thing is a little bit longer, and this is just basic information for me. I've lost my roadmap here. The first thing that confused me, you've changed the higher education endowment to the higher education trust fund. Can you go over why the name change? What does that mean? And can you just go over when you're saying, you know, money is going from here to here, it's going to go from endowment to scholarships to here. I've kind of lost the thread of what's going where from where. Can you just give a sort of a schematic of what this looks like?
Sure, Representative Murray. And I would say on the name change, you know, really just changing the focus, given that, you know, currently the endowments are a large share. I think that's part of the reason why it focuses on endowments. Just given the reallocation of those funds, the name change is just, you know, for consistency with that. I wouldn't read into it too far, other than just to say, trying to align, you know, the name of the program with how the program operates. And then as far as where the money is going, are you talking the current allocations to what we're proposing, or from the actual entities that administer it?
Both, I think. Where's the money coming from that's going into there? And then how, and currently I think it's, well, you tell me. So
these dollars come to the state from 529 college savings plans that are administered by Fidelity. The state takes a share of an administrative fee. Fidelity takes a share of an administrative fee. That program has been tremendously successful over the past 2 decades. It's been a boon to the state and its students. Our intention is to continue that boon and deploy these dollars in ways that can continue to benefit both current students and recent graduates. Right now, 20% goes to direct scholarships. That's paid out of an accounting unit at Treasury. And with that, we are not making any changes to that 20% that goes to direct scholarships. Currently, 80%, so that remainder, goes to university endowments. This proposal will shift that to a 60% to student debt, workforce development and relief, and 20% would stay with those endowments. That's the high level change. The BFA would be tasked with administering that student debt relief program once it's up and running. Yes, Representative Murray.
Go back in the university endowment. Right now, 80% of the fidelity money goes to that. And you said right now, 60% goes to—
No, so right now it's 20% to direct scholarships,
right?
80% to the endowments.
Okay.
Excuse me. Excuse me. The treasurer said that was changed for this fiscal year, that 30% is going to endowments and 70% is going to direct scholarships. So the 80-20 was old business, so to speak, and that this new percentage runs out at the end of June, and then it switches back to the 80-20. So well,
I know. Yeah, so that temporary change that was made for this fiscal year, I guess I'm not accounting for that in my comments, given that it's temporary, right? So the ongoing program would be that 80-20 split as of July 1st, the new fiscal year. So I'm trying to stay simple at a higher level. Traditionally, it has been an 80-20 split, and it would go back to that at the conclusion of this fiscal year.
Within the 8%, you came out with 60% for students and then 20%, and then you went on to something else. Which,
you want to just—
can you go
so
back to
in
the university?
Yeah, okay.
So right now, under current law, absent the temporary change that was made, 80-20. Yep. This new proposal is 20-20-60.
Yep.
20% to direct scholarships, 20% to endowments, 60% to student debt relief. So if you wanted to do a crosswalk between where we are and where this language in HB2 would take us, the 20% for direct scholarships has not changed. That endowment portion, 20% of that stays the same. And then we introduce a new category for student debt relief with that remaining 60%.
Another way of saying that is that the university endowment goes down 60%.
Yeah, so again, we're still providing 20% of the funds in that type of support for their endowments and to help students with scholarships through that program. And again, we're trying to be more targeted in how we can support students after they graduate, relieve some of those pressures that are tied to the high cost of college, and provide them that debt relief, assuming they continue to stay in New Hampshire, continue to work in New Hampshire, and do so for 5 years.
What does the university do with its endowment?
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, a follow-up, please. Hopefully just one. Thank you so much. Sorry. What is where does the university endowment go for?
So those dollars are used to pay additional scholarships to students, and they pay some percentage of that each year. And again, those scholarships that I think James T. Wallace and others have touched on are small and dispersed, where this new student debt relief program can target specific industries and provide a enhanced benefit, if you will, because of the enhanced benefits that not only the state receives, but also the need to drive workforce in critical sectors.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, if I may, just to follow up on Matt's point.
Yes, please.
So these endowments are, the small disbursements that they give are designed to help maintain sort of the self-sustaining nature of these funds. The endowments were built, they're at a healthy capitalization. They're able to continue to, sustain themselves through interest and investments while dispersing a small amount. This isn't taking money away from those existing endowments. It's simply reallocating some of the money that would be used to help grow those endowments, because we feel, and we've seen that they've reached a healthy balance where they're able to help sustain themselves. A smaller amount that maintain, it does not reduce those endowments.
And thank you for that, Chris.
You were going to somehow or other gather up how large the endowments were for all of the colleges that get some of this money?
Yes, I believe we can put that together. Treasury, I believe, keeps data on that, but Monica and I, or Treasurer Mezzapelli and I, will connect offline and see what we can report back on, whether it's aggregated totals or if we can provide a more detailed analysis.
How many, excuse me for interrupting here, but how many colleges and universities do we actually support with this endowment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can answer that. We have 10 colleges and universities participating, and I just would like to add right now the total aggregate is about $137 million. So they have over time been able to grow those endowments. So it is true that they have the ability to continue providing scholarships. So the endowment program is all established in the rules that the advisory commission has rulemaking authority to set those rules, and that's how these two programs have been operating since 2006. So I think one of the clarifications I just want to make is a couple of things. All this funding comes to what we call endowment. So I think there's been a little confusion how this works. The statute, RSA 630A, establishes it is an endowment trust fund, and that's where we keep all of the proceeds that come from the Fidelity send us every month. So that's where all of this funding lives. And perhaps that's the reason why the language in the statute shows the endowment. I don't think it has anything to do with the endowment program. So I just wanted to clarify that. The second piece is, today I'm sort of wearing two hats. I serve on the advisory commission. I also the treasury, but I'm trying to, as I think Mr. Kiwala said, I do not I do not support or be against the legislation. I just my goal today is to provide as much information as I can if there's a way to do that. But I know, for example, that the advisory commission has a position on this bill, and then they'll be able to, at some point, provide their views of how they see the pros and cons of this bill. But so in terms of how the endowments work, they are required to disperse a minimum of 4% of their balance every year. And what I can say is that this particular program, the endowment program, unique endowment allocation program, was designed to create scholarships in perpetuity. So we fund this endowments every year, sending 80% of these proceeds that come from this administrative assessment, and then the other funding goes to direct scholarships. I know the commission has discussed over the last couple of years, they have discussed the possibility of changing that allocation. So I just want to mention that their ability to change the allocation lives in the rules through the rulemaking authority. And I just wanted to the difference is with this proposal, the change will occur in the statute rather than the rules. So I just wanted to clarify that all this time, the commission has had the ability to make those decisions and decide where the funding should go. But with this proposal, it will stay in the law. It will be codified in the law. Again, I just wanted to add those points of clarification.
Thank you. So yes, I think, I'm not exactly sure who, I've got a couple people that will be speaking from other that are listening in to take care of this. So Representative Lynn, you have a question?
Yes, and I have to confess initially that I may be embarrassed because of what I'm about to say, and that is because although I am a member of the 529 Advisory Commission, I had to leave the last meeting early because I had to testify on some other legislation. And so I don't know, you, Monica, you mentioned that the commission had taken I guess a vote or a position on this, and I don't frankly know what that is. Maybe you could educate us, please.
I would like to say that they'll be happy to testify if they have the ability to do that. What I know is that the commission decided during the last meeting on March 8th, and it was based on a discussion. Representative Weiler also serves on the commission, and he was interested in proposing an amendment to the bill that will allow the commission to not have that set percentage set in the statute. I think the amendment, if it has been introduced, will give the advisory commission the ability to change the percentage relative to the 40%. So the commission decided and voted on supporting the idea that instead of 2020, that will be split between the two programs, that will be at the discretion of the commission. And so I think the amendment was going to read that the advisory commission will have the ability to set the percentage according to how they wanted to manage the program. So that was one position that the commission decided. The other one is, I think, if this proposal were not to pass, the commission would like to change the percentage, or rather than 80-20, they would like to change it 70-30 in the rules. And so if this doesn't go through, the commission will go ahead and vote and change their administrative rules. So the 70% goes to direct scholarships and 30% will go to the endowment program. So that was the decision that was made on March 8th.
Thank you. Could I have a follow-up, Madam Chair?
Just a moment.
Thank you.
I think I sent everyone Representative Weiler's comments. If I didn't, I apologize. But what the amendment something that we'll not decide today, but it reads, the commission will receive 40% of the funds, which means 60% for endowment, I guess, and will decide the split between the direct scholarships to New Hampshire residents attending New Hampshire institutions of higher education and the unique endowment allocation program. That's what he sent. So yes, Mr. Key Wallace.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I happened to have a conversation with one of the members of the commission, and Monica, tell me if this is wrong, but I think what that amendment does is it does keep the 60% in as proposed for student debt relief. So they would keep that in for student debt relief. Then the remaining 40 would say the commission decides how much is endowments, how much is scholarships. That way they can flex the number according to the current need. I believe that's the intent of the commission's recommendation. Monica, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the amendment designs to keep student forgiveness intact, actually.
And that was that is correct. That is the amendment that Representative Weiler wasn't had the intention to introduce. Yes.
So may I have a follow-up?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. So, I guess one of the things that really concerns me, and please understand, I think that this idea of debt forgiveness may to attract people to New Hampshire may well be a good one. But I am concerned about the fact that one of the main reasons that we changed, even though it was on a temporary basis, the allocation between the endowment and the direct loans was just as I think one of you pointed out, that the endowments are now, pretty well established and are at pretty good levels. And we, the commission had received information that, you know, the colleges and universities were tending to just build up those endowments and not really make very many, or at least not as many scholarships available as we would do through direct scholarships. And because the commission wanted to increase the number of direct scholarships, that was the reason we changed the allocation. So this is sort of, you know, this is kind of going back on that, if you will, and it may be for a good reason. But the thing that I'm wondering is, would this make sense to, instead of us acting upon it now, to have you know, a further study done on this? Because, for example, I can see the arguments on both sides of this, and it seems to me to be a kind of close question. And one of the things that I would like to know, for example, is exactly how important are the scholarships to the students that are getting the scholarships now? In other words, if, you know, the scholarships aren't all that big, $2,000 as I understand it per year at the most, given the cost of a 4-year, even at the University of New Hampshire. I'm not saying it's unimportant, but I'd like to know what percentage of the total kind of financial aid that various students get do the scholarships represent? How important is it to them not to lose that versus the importance of attracting people to stay in New Hampshire and work here? And I'm just wondering if it would make sense to take a little more time to study that before we make this decision.
If I may, I just would like to add, because I'm the one that sees the numbers, the number of awards that are provided. I have to say that those scholarships are very important to New Hampshire students. And I mean, I have a number that the latest numbers for the endowment program just gave out 2,192 awards, and they range between 1,000 and 36,000. There was one school that provided 36,000 to one student. And again, it's because they have to disperse that 4% that they require. Is a 4% minimum they have to disperse from 4% of the total balance. So some of the scholarships are really key to some of the students. And the annual award, the annual allocation program, that has been difficult to fund just because of that limitation. It always received 20% of the funding. So the award amount has been $800 for several years just because of that. And so because there wasn't enough funding, it was set in the rules, it was 80-20. But with the change that was made this year, again, the eligibility criteria was expanded, and so more awards and more money was provided. So in 2020, there were about 4,500 awards provided to part-time and full-time students. And again, that one was just a minimum of $800. And then this current year and fiscal year 21, we were able to provide $1,000 awards. I don't have the data on those numbers. I don't have, we will probably have some information by the end of the year, by probably May timeframe.
Thank you.
Representative Lynn, if I understand what you're saying is that this 529 commission, I assume, would be the ones to study this issue, or is
no,
there?
You're sort of ahead of.
Yeah. Or is there some other higher education commission that we would task? Because I don't necessarily think, because this money is all outside the budget, if I'm not mistaken, except for the governor's scholarship program that's in the budget. But all of this other stuff is outside the budget. So it could be brought back next year to take care of. And it would simply be a delay of a year in how this is managed. I don't know, James, do you want to comment on that, or do you think there's, we ought to go ahead? I don't know. I know you don't care. All right. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And if I could, well, I'm sorry. You know what? If I could just say, I hadn't thought. You're ahead of me, Representative Umberger. I hadn't really thought on who would do the study, and I'm not sure I really would care. Maybe it's, maybe the governor's office should just do that and provide some further information, or maybe it should be the 529 Commission, or I don't really have a preference on that. I'm just sort of thinking maybe more information would be better. Thank you.
Madam Chair, to answer your question, you're right. I can't say whether I think we should go forward or not within a year. What I can say, I think, to kind of go along with the treasurer's comments about scholarships are certainly important to students. $800 doesn't sound like a lot, but I'm sure it's helpful for those that get it. The other side of the policy consideration is if you look at recent graduates and their job choices and where they locate, you ask them what the most important thing that they find. Student debt is the top of the list every single time. They're burdened by student debt. They need to go to a job market that can pay them, in a way that they can retire student debt, because the debt level is the same whether you graduate from college. Dollar is a dollar, and if New Hampshire's labor market wages are lower, it's hard to compete, say, with Massachusetts or New York, where you make more dollars and your debt's the same, so you can pay it off. So student debt is very important. It's one of the top things they mention, along with affordable housing. Students, or I shouldn't say students, employees also say that the study has shown $1 of student loan forgiveness is worth a lot more in people's minds than $1 of extra pay. So you get a lot of extra bang for your buck. So I think scholarships are obviously very important for people. Debt forgiveness is very important for folks as well. So I just wanted to put that out.
Matthew, did you want to comment on this, or did you want to comment on something else?
On this topic, Chairwoman, if I may, just to say that I appreciate Representative Lynn's comments on making sure we get this right. But what I would say is that this issue's had a lot of conversation over the past couple of years, spanning back to the last budget and then subsequent conversations in 2020. So what we've brought forward, I feel, is a good compromise from where the governor started in his first budget, and through the legislative process and ongoing conversations, we've come to a spot that addresses challenges that we don't need to study because we know they exist today. The first and foremost being workforce in critical sectors like healthcare. So, I think the legislature, is in a good position to make this decision to endorse student debt relief for these critical sectors. And that's something that I don't know that we need or would glean any more information from a study commission, because I think we all have experienced that issue acutely during this pandemic, and trying to James' point, give people that incentive that is meaningful, is tangible, and as someone that has student loans I'm currently paying off myself, a program like this would certainly come into the equation of where would I want to work after college, right? Do I want to maybe go make a few more dollars in Boston, or do I want to stay here in New Hampshire? With this type of an incentive program, if I worked in one of those eligible fields, that would be a tangible benefit that Massachusetts or any other state currently doesn't offer. So there is a compelling interest for New Hampshire to lead on that point and do it now.
Thank you. Represent, just a moment, if I could. Mickey, how do we know can the people that are attending, can they raise their hand if they want to speak? Because I I know of at least 2 people that have contacted me that want to speak.
Yes, they can. And if you'd like me to bring them in, I can, if you're ready
So,
for them now.
yeah, until I see their hand raised,
Okay.
or you see it, then we'll continue here. I don't see any hands raised, but okay. Representative.
I do. There is one representative. I've got Mr. Ed McKay and Tom Cronin from the university system with their hands raised now.
Okay, let's do Representative Porter. You have a question?
I do, Madam Chair, thank you. I think I'd like to get this clear in my head because I might be misunderstanding. We had a very powerful presentation last week from the university system and the community college system about the changing demographics and the struggle to find students to attend the various institutions and the competition between institutions for those students. Will this change as proposed reduce the amount of financial incentives that our local universities and community colleges have to attract students to come to their institutions? Will the pool of money that they have be reduced? Will it be increased so they can encourage more people to come, or will it stay the same? Thank you.
So this proposal relative to the university endowments will continue to put more money in than currently exists today. So endowments obviously have a return on investment. The money we've put in over the past 2 decades has been there, has increased, has grown, and they're paying scholarships on it. The state, through this program, will continue to make additional investments in those endowments. They will continue to have interest. They will continue to pay scholarships. Even if we put proportionally less money to them, there still is an existing and ongoing benefit to those endowments that will continue to increase the availability of those schools to pay additional scholarships to students.
Thank you. Mickey, maybe you could bring up Mr. McKay first, and then Mr. Cronin from the university. Good morning, Mr. McKay. I'm happy to see that you were able to figure out how to get into our meeting. We are all Zoom challenged, so don't feel like you're alone. We did send out your written testimony to all of the committee. So and I know that you've heard all of the comments that have been going around and round and round on this. And so I'd just like to kind of get a summary, or maybe of where you stand on this this whole issue. And it appears that the real discussion that we've been having is not on the percentages or any of that, but rather on the workforce part of this discussion. So I would appreciate if you could give us some thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Humberger and members of the Division 2. Thank you for the opportunity and to speak to you today. And also, hopefully in the written testimony, I walked through a number of the issues that have been discussed here. But let me then hit the highlights, if you will, and ask that the committee consider honoring the commitment when the 529 plan was established, and that is to ensure that all the fees received provide scholarships for the benefit of the residents of the state pursuing programs of study at eligible institutions within the state. And I want to follow up on the March 8th commission meeting, which I did observe. And in that meeting, as Monica has stated, near the end of that meeting, the commission reiterated its commitment to reducing the proportion of the incoming fees going to endowments to 30%. That was a position the commission had taken last year due to the inability to get GELCAR approval. It went to the governor's executive order process. But I think it is fair to say that that's the consensus on the part of the commission, and that's the intent going forward. So 70% of the incoming fees under the commission's perspective, and I understand they need a GELCAR approval for this change, would be to have the fees go to either the annual award or the governor's scholarship program. As stated previously, the annual award is particularly effective for serving adult learners and others coming directly from school, but particularly adult learners who are key to meeting our workforce needs. As many of you know, I've worked a long time in workforce issues with 65 by 25 and so forth. And the biggest opportunity for the state of New Hampshire is to look at those 140,000 adults in the state who have some college but have not completed a degree or a high value credential. And by providing the aid through the annual award, we're particularly focusing on that population. The Governor's Scholarship Program has been exclusively funded from general fund support to date. It's a non-lapsing appropriation, and and under the modeling that I've done and others with spreadsheet, that program, the Governor's Scholarship Program, plus the annual awards, plus the 30% allocation to the endowment program, is fully sustainable from incoming 529 fees, and there will be no future general fund appropriation needed to support the Governor's Scholarship Program or any other element of that. And why is that important? Because that provides long-term assurance to the families in New Hampshire. They will have access to student financial aid for students in state. And to go back to Representative Porter's question and others, one of the key issues for us now as we face these demographic headwinds is providing assurance to New Hampshire families that aid will be there so they can stay in state. Right now, we're losing almost half our students pursuing 2 or 4 year degrees going out of state. It's critically important that we provide that assurance to these families with financial need, that if you stay in state, you can not only enroll in state, but you can accelerate your degree in the sense of going full-time, you have more aid. And again, by my own modeling, I believe the current $1,000 annual award could be increased to $1,500. So I walked through in the written testimony, the total fee amount coming in 17 to 18 million, deducting at 30% for the endowment program, you take off the audit and other required fees, you have roughly, give or take, $12 million available for the annual award program and the Governor's Scholarship Program. Again, those are fully funded for the foreseeable future from those two sources. And let me speak again also to the value of the endowment program. As Monica has correctly stated, there's a minimum of 4% that has to be paid out each year. And that amount is growing substantially each year. But not only that, there's not a dime of administrative costs that can be assessed against those endowments. So that's been a critical feature in the creation of programs such as the Granite Guarantee, knowing there was a Governor's Scholarship Program, annual award program, and the endowment, which provides the flexibility for financial aid officers to package a program such that you can then make the offer of the Granite Guarantee, and essentially making New Hampshire residents who are Pell eligible be able to go to one of the residential campuses of the university free, tuition free. So again, there's major improvements there. And I think, and the future is tremendous for these programs. But I also think it's important to address the other aspects of what is proposed by the diversion of the 60% fees. We've had a lot of discussion. James and I and others have talked and we've testified previously on, is this the best use of those fees? Let me suggest that with the initial CARES Act, which was approved last March, for the first time, businesses can deduct up to $5,250 a year for payments to employees to reduce their student debt. Their debt is immediately reduced by that $5,250. Now that was only a 1-year provision, but in the second iteration of the CARES Act, approved by Congress in December, they put a 5-year window on it. So this is good for 5 years. And there's very, very strong bipartisan support. So I think that program exists long-term. So every business that wants to help pay down student debt has a deduction, which again, is also other comments made. I think that's going to be tax-free to the employee receiving that payment to pay down the principal on the student debt. So that's another benefit of that. Now, if the trouble with, and again, James understands this, and he's been very honest and candid about how to present the trouble with forgivable loans to millennials. They say, wait a minute, you're substituting one loan for another, and it doesn't, my debt's not reduced for 5 years. But millennials say, 5 years, that's a lifetime. I mean, you know, what happens? I get married, have a kid, I do something else. So forgivable loans are not an attractive option generally for millennials or young people. It does not enable them to reduce their aggregate debt. They delay household, there's no acceleration of household formation, which basically, if there's a way to pay down the debt more quickly, then that's much more attractive to millennials. So let me suggest an alternative that I've suggested before. If there's an interest on the part of businesses in New Hampshire or industries identified by the governor's office or others that really are critical to this state, then why not simply provide a tax credit against the business profits tax or the business enterprise tax for the amount over $5,250, which is already a tax deduction. For example, if I'm one of these Army companies and I want to pay down $10,000, and that would be immediately off the student's debt, then I could take the $5,250 federal deduction, in addition, take a tax credit of $4,750. You talk about a big bang for your buck, and it would only go to the companies that have skin in the game, that are partnering with the state and are aggressive in saying, we want to help you attract and retain young professionals to this state. So I think there are more cost-effective, more efficient ways to achieve the goal of the governor's office and others, while also maintaining that revenue stream for New Hampshire families in terms of being able to provide support for New Hampshire, for students with financial need, going to college in New Hampshire, where they are far more likely to secure a workplace internship or practicum experience and then stay, work, and play in New Hampshire. I apologize for going on, Representative Umberger. I have some real energy and interest in this topic.
As you know, I know you, so it's okay. But my question to you is that some of this loan forgiveness was going to people that were working for the state.
Yes.
And
so if I can just, in the written testimony, I suggest that the governor's office had proposed in the upcoming biennium $3 million a year to support the governor's scholarship program. Again, that's not necessary under the plan that would retain all the 529 fees within the 529 commission. So repurpose the $6 million and provide it to the state loan repayment plan that's administered by HHS for those health centers and other not-for-profit industries.
Does anyone know if that $6 million is still in there or if it's gone? Don't all speak at once.
If I may, Madam Chair, the $6 million is, yes, so the governor's scholarship program, we're budgeting $3 million each year. So that's the $6 million that Mr. McKay is referring to. And that is in Treasury's budget.
My understanding, however, is Division 1 has moved to recommend reducing that appropriation essentially to nothing. So I just wanted to just keep us in the loop with what Division 1 is recommending for that program.
That was my understanding as well. So good thought, but.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. Thank you.
Okay, I see Catherine Provencher is here. Are you going to speak for the university side, or is Tom?
Still morning. Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. I'll take this one. I really think much has been already said, so I just wanted to reiterate a couple of points. Again, Catherine Provencher, Chief Administrative Officer, University System. I would like to point out that the two programs differ. I'm not taking a position on the value of either program, but one program is workforce, business, and economic development, and one program is scholarship dollars for the veriest needy. I mean, the neediest students. When we're talking about an estimated family contribution of 0, these are our neediest New Hampshire students. The other point I wanted to reiterate, I attended my first unique commission meeting a week ago today, since I had been state treasurer. And I do want to reiterate the point that Monica made, that the commission made 2 votes. One, if the program is to move forward as written in House Bill 2, the commission would seek to have flexibility with that 20%, 20%. There's a recognition on the part of the unique commission that we need to get dollars into students' hands now. And so the commission may seek to have 100% of the 40% go directly to annual scholarships. The second part of the motion was, should this legislation not proceed as written in House Bill 2, the commission would immediately move to GELCAR to have the split between annual scholarships and endowment portion move to 70% direct, 30% endowment, as is currently the case for this 1-year temporary allocation. That's about it from me. Again, we're not taking a position on the worthiness of either program. I think they both could have, we don't know, but could have really high impact on the state. But the best of both worlds, of course, would be able to do both. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm happy to take any questions. I did want to, you probably already know this, and I think Mr. McKay mentioned this. It's $18.5 million a year that's coming in through these fidelity assessments. So it's a big chunk of dollars coming in. And so 60% going to the debt relief program would be about $10.8 million a year going to the debt relief. And then the 40% would be 7.2 million combined going to the scholarships. So it is and those, I said, the estimates are it's about 18.5 million almost for fiscal years 21, 22, and 23. I used 18 million because we have to pay for an audit and there are some administrative costs, but that's just an estimate.
Madam Chair, Kathy, could I maybe add just 2 quick items? And again, I apologize if Mr. McKay did mention these. And Madam Treasurer, I think you would mention that 10 colleges and universities are participating in the program. I'm just curious if you were actually combining USNH and CCSNH sort of as one entity there. It was my understanding that essentially every college and university in the state is eligible to participate.
If I can hop in, Monica, just to clarify, I think that's what you meant is there's 5 private institutions plus the 11 institutions in the community college and university. So a total of 16 current participants.
Perfect. That is correct. We combine them, yes.
Great, thank you. And then just to maybe one of the questions that was sort of being asked, and I think Kathy just this morning sent over the fiscal note for the university system. But in terms of the endowment, and again, Mr. McKay definitely spoke to this, but our estimate is through the diversion, if the commission doesn't change the allocations, which they are talking about doing, but even if you kept it at 80-20, that means about $200,000 every single year in less money able to come out of the endowments to scholarships. And that's $2,000 in year 1, plus 200,000 more in year 2, plus 200,000 more in year 3, on and on and on. So again, the way the endowments work and they continue to build and make money over time, as this diversion continues, it really does become a very significant pot of money that is no longer available for student loans or for student scholarships.
James, did you want to comment on that, or was it something else?
Yes, if I could, Madam Chair, I just wanted to also point out, I think in addition to Tom's point, so the $200,000, I'm not sure exactly how the math works. I assume that's the 4%. That's 4% of what wouldn't be going to endowments in the future. It's not $200,000 less than what is being given out now. It's sort of $200,000 less a year that might be given out more than what's going away now. So the trade-off would be keeping it as it is now, or it would go up by $200,000 a year. If you don't have that increase of 200 grand a year, what you gain is 10 million a year student debt relief. You lose 200,000 a year in scholarships.
That's right, James. Just to be clear, though, that 200,000 is just the USNH portion. It does not account for pretty much a similar $200,000 going across the rest of the state.
Matt, did you have something on this issue? Your lips are moving, but no sound.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Just a clarification that when Thomas, and I think James touched on this, but that is not a real reduction in what we're paying out. It is the delta between the continual increases and the continual disbursements to the fund, which will continue to increase as opposed to the status quo. So just want to make sure we're talking reductions. They are potential as opposed to actual dollars currently in endowments, which we would see additional scholarships paid out of.
That's right. That's Matt and James have it right. Right. When we prepare a fiscal note, we have to compare what the current rule says compared to what the legislation says. So currently you'd have 80% going into endowments, and that over time translates to those dollars not going to endowments results in $200,000 less compounding each year.
Okay, Representative Petrie, did you have a question on this, or was it on something else?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering what the total student debt was in the state of New Hampshire.
I'm not sure that anyone has a clear idea of how much student debt there is in the state of New Hampshire. Okay,
Representative Umberger, I think the last statistic I saw were students that do have debt. The average debt was around $37,000 in New Hampshire. That's a ballpark figure, but I think it's close.
Thank you. See that Mick has brought up a couple of people to talk to us, and Mr. Williams, you were up first, I believe.
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me, Representative Umberger. My name is Alfred Williams. I'm the president at River Valley Community College, and I'm representing the community college system in New Hampshire. One of the reasons why I'm here today is that I have an extensive background in financial aid, and I started in higher education when I was in law school as a graduate assistant in financial aid. And in all my years in higher education, I have either directly supervised or ran a financial aid office. We're not taking a position on the legislation, but I just wanted to point out some of the ways that the scholarship program impacts community college students. Our students, it seems like it may be small amounts, but those small amounts have a significant impact on our students. $1,000 award, $1,500 award can mean the difference between taking a class, taking an additional class, finishing as quickly as possible. And our students stay in New Hampshire. Our graduates all take jobs for the most part, the majority of them in New Hampshire. And we can see that the impact, particularly of the unique annual funds, which is geared towards full Pell students, has a real impact on getting people out of poverty. If you look at River Valley Community College and White Mountains Community College, They have some of the highest rates of income jumps of any community colleges in the country, where students jump from the lowest fifth of income to the 3/5 of income within 5 years of graduation. And some of that is a direct result of the funding that goes to those full Pell students to get them through as quick as possible and get them into the job force. So we can see that the scholarships have a real impact on our students, a real impact on their ability to get into the workforce and work and live in New Hampshire.
So if I'm hearing, oh, you're not taking a position. Okay, thank you. Right. Is there anybody out there that's taking a position? Miss, sorry. Is it Skiri? Is it Deborah Skiri?
It is, yes, thank you. Yes, I'm Debbie Skiri, and I serve as the president of
Excuse me, you need to
College and University Council.
Yeah. You need to speak up or move closer to your microphone.
Try this. See if that helps. Is that a little bit better? Excellent. Sorry about that. Many of you probably are familiar with the NHCUC, but if you aren't, I'll just say it's a nonprofit consortium of the public and private institutions here in New Hampshire. And these institutions are really recognized and highly regarded for their outstanding research, teaching, community service activities, and they serve certainly as major centers of activity that are vital to the economic development of the community and to our state. And I also serve as the newly elected chairperson of the New Hampshire College Tuition Savings Plan, which we're referring to for ease purposes as unique today. Many people have made, I think, some of the most important salient points already. There's a couple I just like to really reiterate. And I guess the most important one to me is really that the monthly, the annual fees generated by the plan are used and have been used exclusively since its inception, very successfully, to provide scholarships to our neediest New Hampshire students and their families attending New Hampshire schools. So again, it's a New Hampshire program, very through and through. I also want to make sure that we've been clear about the extensive reach that this particular program has. And so since its inception, the 529 Commission, or the Unique Commission, has awarded more than 72,000 scholarships, again, to our neediest New Hampshire students, helping the students get an education, stay and succeed right here in New Hampshire. So those two are very important things. We talked a little bit, Treasurer Mazzapelli did a great job sort of talking about what motions were made at our meeting just a week ago. I think it's really important to reiterate a couple of things from there, that when we talked about making the 70-30 split, that it had worked well and that we would do as a commission vote to make that change permanent if we were able to take that opportunity. That it is definitely the commission's intent to make that permanent. And while there was really no position taking on the worthiness of the bill or the proposal in HB 2, we as a commission realized it could happen. And we want to be sure that people know that we are very flexible as a commission and willing to work with folks. Again, under this proposal, non-New Hampshire students would not have necessarily the same kinds of intentionality around the focus on New Hampshire neediest students. There's a lot of unknowns with this particular proposal. As folks have stated when it was started, it was considered a pilot, and now under this proposal will be codified really in statute and posed to grow substantially over time. And certainly while workforce development is an important program for New Hampshire, it should really not be undertaken, I don't think, at the expense of scholarship for New Hampshire's neediest students. And the final point I want to make is that New Hampshire's funding for scholarships, general student scholarships, is extremely low relative to other states. And when you compare New Hampshire expenditures against other states and territories, over the time we have ranked second from the bottom in total dollars spent by the state. So the challenge here, I think, is that there are no other funds really being committed at the level that we're talking about here. So we certainly encourage New Hampshire legislators to honor the successful program that UNIQUE has had and our longstanding compact with the families and students of New Hampshire who directly benefit from these scholarships. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Representative Lynn, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And this is, I guess, would be directed to either Matt or James. Am I understanding correctly that under the loan forgiveness program, there would not be a requirement that in order for a person to be eligible for that, the person had to have attended college in New Hampshire? And I guess if that's true, then I guess my only question would be, you know, we do that for the scholarship program. We say it only applies if you're going to school in New Hampshire, and you know, that's a choice, presumably, to encourage people to go to school in New Hampshire, which is I'm not, you know, that I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just making that observation. And so, if we do that for the scholarship program, would it make sense to put that as a requirement on the loan forgiveness program, that we want you to stay in New Hampshire, and if you've gone to school in New Hampshire, maybe there's a better chance you're going to stay in New Hampshire, and so this will be just sort of a further incentive. I don't know the answer to that, but I just asked the question.
No, and that's a very fair question, Representative. You're correct that the legislation does not require them to have attended a New Hampshire institution, but they would need to be a New Hampshire resident working for a New Hampshire company. That the idea there is to cast the broadest net possible to address the workforce sectors that we're trying to, again, incentivize people to continue to live and work in New Hampshire. If the committee wanted to further restrict that to New Hampshire graduates that live in New Hampshire, that work in New Hampshire, the committee could take that action. But again, it just restricts that pool and also limits the possibility for this proposal to attract new workforce to New Hampshire. And that's the consideration that we just would need to balance.
Thank you.
Representative Heath, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. And this question is for either Deb Scarry, and it's nice to see you, Deb, or Catherine Preventure, who actually, weren't you one of the architects of the UNIQUE program? But my real question is, what would really, this program benefits all our colleges, all our New Hampshire colleges and universities, be they public or private. What will be the overall impact to our institutions if this program were to be changed as such, the recommendation is?
Thank you, Mary. I can start, and Kathy, please build on here. I think, you know, we've just stated it's a huge amount, 60% off the top that would not be going to scholarships. I guess that's the piece that's, you know, important. And the fact number two is that there are no other resources that we really have in New Hampshire that would be able to really make up for it. This is, you know, this is what we point to when we talk about aid to students at the state level. So I think, you know, it would be profound. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative Heath. No, I was not the architect of this program. That goes back to Mike Ablowich and Governor Shaheen.
Oh, okay.
I want to reiterate what Matt and James have said earlier. If this legislation passes as is, under current rule, there will be no change in direct scholarships, and the endowment scholarships that are paid out right now will continue to be paid out at the same level they are right now. The way the endowment works is, Monica mentioned, I think the total is 138 million across the state in all the colleges and universities. The university systems portion of that is $67 million as of last June 30. The way an endowment, and this is like most endowments, the way this works is we take the average balance over the market value over the last 12 quarters. You apply 4% to that, and it will pay out at that rate. And those scholarships go to the neediest New Hampshire students. So without the endowment growing further, those amounts will still continue to pay out. Now, over time, it won't keep up with inflation, but if you had a portion of it going to endowments, it will keep up with inflation. But again, the endowment won't grow, so more scholarships won't be available in the future. Now that's, again, that's an existing rule as is with this 80-20 split. The answer changes if in fact the rule were changed as voted by the commission to go 70% for annual scholarships and 30% for endowment to keep up with inflation, right? Right now, 20% of $18 million is $3.6 million. So that is about the amount that's being paid out in annual direct scholarships per year. If that number changed to 70% of the $18 million, now we're paying out $12.6 million a year in direct scholarships. I'm probably confusing the issue. It's already so confusing.
No, actually, surprisingly, it makes sense to me. Sorry. Representative Lynn, you have a question?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I don't know how my hand got up. I do not have a question. Thank you.
Okay, I think maybe you didn't put it down. All right. Okay, so I think we all have a lot of thinking to do on this. I really, really appreciate everyone's comments today, and it certainly has helped me in understanding this entire proposal. As I read it, every time I read it, I came up with different thoughts, but I think I have now at least a clear understanding of what is in HB2. And obviously we've got, I think I'm also hearing that we don't want to put the percentage in legislation, but rather what we want to do is give the unique program the ability to change that in rules. And I don't know if that's the way the legislation is right now, or it's something else. But you don't want it to be in legislation. I got that totally. And we can make sure that happens if it isn't that way right now. And the other thing is, as I said, we're going to have to, the workforce issue is obviously of concern. And Representative Lynn, I think, I'm not sure that the workforce issue has been, what do I want to say? I think it's a good idea to highlight particular industries where we are really suffering from not having sufficient people to be there. But on the other hand, Mr. McKay has said that, the businesses can already get a tax deduction for paying that. So these are just some of the issues that we're going to have to work out. And obviously, we're not going to do it today, but we are going to have to do it soon. So put your thinking caps on and because if we need to redo legislation, we've got to give Mickey some kind of thought about where we're going. Because you can't, you can't just say, well, Mickey, make this up. Although I'm sure he could do a very good job with it, but we do need to give him some ideas as to where we are, that we can get some kind of consensus on. So I think that we will recess until 1 o'clock, when we're going to tackle another issue that obviously will be a problem, and maybe or maybe not, and that's dealing with a new commission looking at the lorry list problem, if that's the right term. So that'll be another fun afternoon. So we'll see you all at 1. Have a good lunch.